Did you know the Ancestral Kitchen podcast has a thriving online community? Patreon members love our private group discussion forum, away from the noise of mainstream social media. In this group, conversations brim with ideas, recipes, humor, and thoughtful discussion of member questions. There's a bonus exclusive podcast where Allison and I answer member questions and talk more informally about our kitchens and our lives. This private podcast also includes after-show tidbits with guests, everything we didn't dare say on the main feed, and all the extra stuff we couldn't fit into the primary episodes. There's a monthly live chat where we get together with members, and afterwards the recording goes up in the private podcast feed for members to listen in later. Come and be a part of a group that will befriend, encourage, and support you and your kitchen endeavors. We'd love to have you join us. Find all the details at ancestralkitchenpodcast.com.
When Allison and I were starting this podcast, she asked who was on my dream list of people to talk to. I said Tara Couture of Slowdown Farmstead, and today that is what happened. In an incredibly long and appropriately slow morning, we sat down together to talk for the first time. It was like visiting with an old friend I had waited a very long time to see again. Tara once shared her life on Instagram and Substack, and I followed her avidly there, listening to her wisdom, both practical and philosophical, on butchery and growing and shifting, and how in the midst of life we are in death. Taking words from the screen to the printed page, Tara recently wrote a book, Radiance of the Ordinary. Since I had dropped off social media some time ago, and Tara soon would herself, I was no longer reading her words, so when my copy arrived in the mail, it felt like unwrapping a long-awaited, much-anticipated letter from a beloved mentor. In this episode today, Tara and I discussed many things, including what does it look like to be living life at a human pace, as a human, in an ever-increasingly inhumane world? Is it even possible or practical to be a human in a world that expects you to be and treats you as a machine? Tara and I went through a lot of tea and boza over this long conversation, so I invite you to settle in and join in with us, and let's be humans together.
Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen podcast.
I'm Alison, a European town dweller living in England.
And I'm Andrea, living on a family farm in Northwest Washington State, USA.
Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen.
Welcome to Ancestral Kitchen. I am here today not with Allison as usual, but I'm actually here with Tara Couture. And I realized as soon as I said that I didn't ask you if I was saying your last name right, but I hope I am. Okay. Well, welcome to Ancestral Kitchen.
Thank you.
We've only been talking for 2 hours, so at some point we thought, we should hit record. Anyways.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I just love what you and Allison are up to, Andrea, so I'm honored to be here, truly.
Well, it is, to us, it's a great honor to have you on. As you know, I think it is, you have been on my wish list for so long. And to get to talk to you in person has been really far beyond what I could have expected. But anyways, it's been a lovely morning so far, and I've got my boza here. Allison has got me completely hooked on this, and I can't believe it took me so long to make it, but now that I'm making it, I'm drinking it every day. It is so good. But I wanted to ask you what you last ate before we got on to record.
What I last ate. So for breakfast this morning, we had leftover moose stew that I had made yesterday. And I had some fermented ginger carrots in it, and had my obligatory coffee with warm milk and honey in it, and a piece of sourdough toast with beef liver pate and marmalade on top, which is an absolute addiction. I could eat it every meal. I've been eating it for 3 years. Yeah, that's what I had.
Not going to argue against a hyper-focused food. I heard in your description there what you said before we even got on, a lot of slow fast food.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of summer foods and like long sit foods in there, which I want to pull that thread right now and ask you about that.
That's just something that sort of teased itself out just through cooking so much for so long. And a lot of these foods that we cook, these traditional foods, take time and preparation, as you well know. And so for us having a farm, like this summer is really a heavy workload season, and we're preserving food. And I started just, I guess, out of necessity. I mean, I want to eat good food, and a lot of these things, the time it takes is mostly cooking. I find, like, there's definitely the prep, but like this morning, before I spoke with you, after I had my breakfast, my plants were screaming at me that they needed to be watered, and so I'm running around the house watering them. And at the same time, I just put a pot on, I put some dollops of ghee in there, and I was browning a lamb shoulder and a couple of pieces of lamb neck at the same time. And so it's browning, and I'm watering plants and going back and forth and flipping them around. And then I took out a jar of some plum preserves that I had. It's just like a sort of a Chinese 5-spice, sort of anise flavored plum preserve that I have.
Oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah. And then when it was browned, I poured that whole jar over top. I quartered up an apple. I quartered up an onion. I put in some bone broth, put on the lid. And, at noon, I'll have a really beautiful lamb dish. And so it's just that idea of like eating this really, beautiful, long cooked, deeply flavored, rich flavored food. But sort of I'm leaning into the work that I did in the summer, and I'm using this time of my year, winter, as more of a resting sort of, it's being able to utilize that wood stove to like slow cook something, and being able to utilize the fruits of our labor from the summer in the growing season to make the meal cooking time less so right now. So it's more of a time of rest. I think that's one of the things I most have enjoyed about having a farm, is getting into those rhythms of the seasons that I think get a little bit blurred when all foods are available at all times consistently throughout the year, I like having that abundance and scarcity, and really understanding what a raspberry is supposed to taste like, because I'm eating it in the summer and not in the middle of the winter, that sort of thing. So that's just what I mean by sort of that fast food from slow food, is we do the work beforehand, and then it gives us some flexibility in our day-to-day when things get a little bit, full, or we just want to have some rest. We've earned that rest. Yeah,
you're cashing in on all that
exactly
energy expenditure, like splitting firewood and filling the woodshed, and then snuggling up, just shoving logs in the fire all winter. I split that wood. I was thinking when you were talking about that, it's kind of interesting that moving into the slower food as a means of restoring some humanity for ourselves. You were saying right before we got on, when you had off the cuff mentioned the slow food and the fast food, I was thinking, isn't it interesting that that's one of the primary ways that the machine unraveled our humanity, was taking away the food, the tactileness of working with the food, and then the immediacy, the urgency, the scarcity, all that kind of went away into, tomatoes year round. And I mean, there are people who are shout out to Elliot Coleman and the likes that are, growing lots of things all the time. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to like food being shipped in from all around the world, so that never do you feel a sense of seasonality. But it's like trying to I feel like food for me started out as that kind of like, oh, I need to eat like better or healthy or something is awry with what I'm eating. And then it started going from more of like, oh, this is like a sensory, pleasurable, enjoyable experience. And then it started like evolving and further like, wow, I'm turning into a human again instead of just a customer. What are you eating these days? You pinged a couple things in there that time past. I remember you not eating. So I'm curious about like honey and apples and sourdough bread and things like that.
Yeah, I've gone through a lot of different transitions, I guess, different ways of shaping traditional food so that it fit how, so I felt good eating it. I think that paying attention to how we react to foods is really important, and also that changes. It's not a static thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we are forever changing. Our bodies are turning over. We're new people every few months, and so I think that it's really important to tie into that in ourselves. And so I know a lot of times people sort of have asked me questions about what to eat, and I truly can't answer that for anyone. I think that, the work of our lives is finding out who we are and how we do and what makes us, be as fully realized as human beings as we can be. And food's a really important part of that. Not the only part, of course, but... So for me, I mean, there was a time where I was quite sick with Lyme disease, and so I had to limit my foods because of the inflammation in my body. And so, I was eating traditional foods, but I wasn't eating grains for a long time. And my diet sort of got dwindled down to very basic animal foods and stuff. And as I got better, I started experimenting and adding foods back in again. So it's always changing, but it's always most definitely sourcing our food from the same place, eating ancestral food. There was a time I didn't drink raw milk just as raw milk. I would, I'd have kefir, I would make yogurt with it, and that did well for me. But now I'm like a little calf. I'm just drinking a big cup of milk with almost every meal. And I'm feeling fantastic with it. But I'm also, in my mid-50s and I've not the same person I was when I was in my 40s. And, so I think that's really important to tie into those cues. And so anyway, that's sort of maybe a long-winded preemptive little ditty before my answer. But so for right now, I'm the same foods I've always eaten. Meat from our farm, and also my husband's a hunter, so that as well. And I'm eating sourdough grains, and that's been an interesting experiment because even though I only eat traditional organic grains, and I'm very lucky that we have some fantastic farmers around us that are friends of mine that I can source my grain from. Some I'm doing better than with others, and others, it'll seem like I'm doing okay. Like I was doing quite well with einkorn, and then my body was like, nah, but I do really well with rye. So I'm just playing around and experimenting with that. Like I said, the raw milk, and in the winter time, I'm eating the preserves that we've made during the summer. So we have a really large organic fruit co-op that I organize, and we get all of our fruit in bulk. And so I preserve a lot of that, and that makes its way into, like I alluded to earlier, like the plum sauce as an example, that it would be in the meat. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily, we do have canned peaches that I make, but other than that, it's more of like cooked down sauces, which I think maybe is a little bit more in line with winter time. I don't necessarily want to be eating a bunch of fresh fruit or frozen fruit or however we would keep that. And so like a lot of stews and curries and Yeah, eating my pate and marmalade every day. I just that sort of thing. So, yeah, I guess that's meat, dairy, sourdough grains, potatoes, root vegetables, cabbages, a lot of soups. I eat bone broth every day, so that sort of shows up as soups. I just yesterday at lunch we had rooster soup, which is the best type of soup to have.
I love it.
If you've been around ancestral food for very long or listened to the podcast for just a few episodes, you know liver is a superfood, and Allison and I both love it. You're looking at a food packed with vitamins A, K, a broad spectrum of B vitamins, CoQ10, bioavailable iron, plus many essential minerals. Liver is your first stop when seeking to gain energy and restore your health. Not only is it a delicacy and staple of traditional diets, it's the first thing most animal predators go for when they're hunting. Are you looking for a good way to work liver into your daily life, but getting it on the table just isn't happening yet or as much as you'd like? Or maybe, like I went through earlier this year, you're pregnant and you're pretty sick and not much food is staying down. This is where liver capsules come in. Allison and I are both supplementing our ancestral diets with liver capsules from One Earth Health. We get all the incredible benefits of liver, even when we're on the road, or preparing non-liver meals for our family, or we just can't get a hold of a liver, and the sourcing and preparation has all been handled for us. One Earth Health produces nutritious organ capsules from 100% grass-fed, New Zealand-raised cattle. Support the pod by purchasing through our link. You'll get 15% off your first order and 5% off subsequent orders. Go to ancestralkitchenpodcast.com/liver or check the show notes.
I feel like when I was introduced to the idea of ancestral food, I was like I've been in the pursuit of, the right way of eating or whatever you want to call it, as one does. And so I kind of dabbled with veganism, vegetarianism, paleo. Probably the initial through line to that was realizing organic food and coming off of farms was kind of the dawning of all of that awakening. But then when I feel like I was introduced to ancestral food, it was like that vision Peter had where like the food was coming down in the hammock or whatever from heaven. It was like, everything's permissible. And when I started thinking along the lines of, all the food that is God made on earth, not the food like products from factories, but like all the God-made food is allowed. And then you need to sort of massage into what is feeling right for the healing stage of your body and things like that. I feel like that was a big mind shift for me because then it became more about preparation methods and growing methods and even ethics of food started to come into the conversation. And that was a big push for me because I remember thinking like grains, humans and grains, this is okay because there's like a lot of propaganda out there about a lot of things, lard for one. But yeah, it's been kind of amazing. So it's cool to hear about your shift because I think did you experience this on your Instagram? I'm sure you did, where people came to you wanting the list, like tell me what I can eat or not, and it's like that's not how this works. It's so hard to explain.
I was a practicing nutritionist for a while in private practice.
Oh, that's right.
And
yes.
That's literally, you just explained why I left. People want a formula. And I think you really miss out on the tremendous gifts when you don't just have some patience with yourself, listen to the feedback of your body. And if you don't know how to receive that, then spend your time figuring that out, just spending some time, eating something. How do you feel? How are you moving? What are your emotions? I mean, emotions are huge. People don't realize how much food affects literally our personalities. So just I'm nobody wants to hear that when they pay a nutritionist to tell them what to eat, right? So I always felt like I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it because of that. But I think I love what you're saying about that, and I think that there's just so much, so many gifts in just being able to listen to ourselves, to develop that, because I think we're sort of in this culture where we're not shown how to do that, or we're not given examples. Everything is about getting the right information and overlaying it onto ourselves, and hopefully it works. And if it doesn't work, then we go to someone else for another right piece of information and overlay it. And people are just
the right information that we like.
Exactly. and it can just really put us into this cycle of constantly searching outside of ourselves for these answers, instead of, listening maybe to, I think the best of us is when we can share our experiences and our stories and the things that work for us, and people can take that and just, take what works for them, try it out, see what happens, and then share that with other people, instead of like this idea of like someone holds a key for you that's going to solve the problem. It just doesn't work that way.
We want someone to save us. I have definitely seen that in homeschool. And I know you homeschooled for a bit, and I don't know if, is Charlotte Mason a name you've ever heard of?
I've heard.
She's an education philosopher. But side note, she adamantly says, whenever possible, eat outside.
Oh.
And she was kind of like an anti-machinist in like that really burgeoning industrial age. And she wanted us to recognize the humanity in children. And she, in an era of stifling indoor early industrial foods, she wanted people to make their children beef tea and put wool clothes on them and go outside. So, our kind of person. But people often come to her education philosophy and they're like, okay, what's the list of books? What's the right books to read? And the answer is, well, it's a philosophy. So there's not really a list. Like, there's definitely things that aren't on the list if there were to be one. But there's Cindy Rollins talks about Charlotte Mason a lot. She's a homeschooling mom down here in the States, and she says Charlotte Mason isn't compatible with open and go curriculum. And my friend Leah said ancestral food is not compatible with open and go food. Like, that isn't the way that the food works. And I felt like that was such a good point that she made. And when you talk about the slow food, that becomes fast food. Like, that isn't open and go food. That was, hours of your summer day toiling over something preceded by hours of the past 12 months, growing something. And then when you see all that food on your plate, you think of I know I do, and I'm sure you do, but all the people who were there contributed to that plate. And you feel this love for them, for the food, the love they had for you, how it all contributed to this event that is now your meal, versus the coldness of opening a box of something that maybe is the right nutrients or something, but just doesn't feed that. Anyways, that comes to my mind all the time. It isn't open and go. It just doesn't work that way.
There's this profound energy to everything, and we disregard it because we can't measure it. I think the goal is being able to find that part of yourself where you can measure it for yourself, where you can really tie into it. And whether that's your home, and having sort of natural materials and furnishings around you, your clothes, wearing natural materials, I'm wearing a pair of these wool socks right now that never in a million years could you fit into a shoe or a boot, because someone knitted them for me, and they are so chunky,
the best guy.
and the heels where the ankle should be, and they're misshapen, but they are just so lovely. And every time I put them on, I just think of that person with such fondness, and imagine like her sitting there and knitting these with the intention that I was going to put them onto my feet. And like everything we do, we can bring that awareness and intention, even if we can't quite feel it. It's the desire to feel it, and just to pause and reflect on what we are about to eat or put on our bodies, or where we are, what we're sitting on, what we're creating, and sort of pulling ourselves into that. I think it's one of the richest things about eating these beautiful foods is how you get slowly brought into this way of being and receiving and putting yourself into this flow of this energetic space that you start becoming familiar with over time. It doesn't happen right away. At first it's like, oh, I'm going to eat this because I don't want to eat GMOs and I don't want to eat organic. And that's fine. That's great. You have to start somewhere, but that's not the destination. The places it can bring you to, the wholeness and the richness of a life are not for anyone else to tell you or give you. It's like a gift that you receive over time, and with persistence and with humility to the awe of just the beauty of the design of things. And you just naturally start falling into this way of being in the world. And for me, like, food very much was the conduit that brought me and started, doors started opening. And it wasn't just, oh, I didn't want to eat like Monsanto's garbage anymore. It wasn't this like negative avoidance to bring me to something. It's that I started really understanding like the richness and the connection. And that's what keeps me there. I'm not afraid of something, so I want to eat this way. I'm in love. I'm in love with this creation and the design of us, and the absolute mystical beauty of all these things that we so perfectly fit into. And our culture hides a lot of that from us, and it's still there for us to excavate. And for me, that is like being able to do that and being committed to that is a pleasure, and it brings my life great meaning. And so it's easy, right? Because I'm so in love with it. And so of course I want more. It's not a chore, and it's not, I'm not trying to tick a box, and I'm not trying to, eat sourdough because it's good for my gut bacteria. I couldn't give a hoot. I mean, it's so much richer than that.
Yeah, I feel that. I think that you're right. It does sometimes start with, okay, I guess GMOs are bad. Yes, fact, they are. Yeah. And I think that is a perfectly fine place to start. I mean, some people start homeschooling, just comes to my mind as just always an immediate comparison. Some people start homeschooling because they're like, something was wrong with the school system that we were in and we needed to get out of it. And that's a perfectly fine reason to start. And then the farther down the path they go, the more reasons and joys and loves start to bubble up, and then things start to get ordered properly. And that happens with food for sure, which is cool. I want to jump right to that question I had asked you from my friend, because I feel it's like a nice segue. Where she had asked if you could kind of expand. You were a nutritionist, and there was a reason you started that. And then hold on, everybody listening. Tara wrote a book. Finally wrote a book. I don't know how long I was following you on Instagram, but a long time. And then Substack. And then I always said, I wish she'd write a book one day. I just want to read it on a page. And you did. Thank you. I know you did it for me. But you wrote this book, Radiance of the Ordinary, Essays on Life, Death, and the Sinews That Bind. And of course you worked that into the title. Like, that's just amazing. The subtitle is so vivid, like all your writing is. And it was a real pleasure for me when I got this book, which I think I told you I kind of binge read it in 2 days. And it was a real pleasure to see your words, your story, the like pictures of your life. Like, I think this book is more vivid than your Instagram pictures. Your words are very articulate and well, I can tell you read a lot. Let's put it that way. And anyways, so I really enjoyed it, and it was really nice just to see all of that on a written page. And you talked in this book about your progression. It kind of threads throughout all the way towards the end, and the way that all of that that you just spoke about the food, all the pieces of life move around it so much. That is one thing I think about a lot when I think about how much of my life has expanded and opened because of the food. And then I think, oh, in the obverse, that is what was taken away from us with the industrial food complex. Could you talk? Wow, I'm so long-winded right now. Could you talk about that progression, or the progression you've been making? You also did allude to it with the Lyme situation, but can we just go a little bit farther on that and expand a little bit more?
Well,
and with your children too, as you, I don't know where you were when they came along, and so I don't know what transitions they had to make with you.
Yeah. So, well, thank you very much for the very kind words about my book. You're very kind. I grew up, my mom sort of like home cooked things, and I had a very traditional Slovak babka, my grandmother, who was just an incredible cook and pastry chef. Oh my goodness. So I was so blessed to be able to eat her food and to be able to cook with her a little bit, and to have such a huge extended family that all the women could just really cook. We used to rent a church basement and have these traditional Slovak meals, and it was.
What's something you would eat? Can you tell me?
Oh, sure, I can tell you. I could talk about that. Well, we would have holubchi, which is like a cabbage roll. So it would have rice and beef inside of it. That would be slow cooked. Of course, pierogies, always cheese and potato. There was a sausage, a very traditional sausage that actually had rice in it. It was pork and rice, and it was quite dry. But it was it would have nutmeg, allspice in it. It was absolutely delicious. The desserts were just there would be like pork schnitzel. That was a big thing as well. And then the desserts, a lot of poppy seed, a lot of butter pastries that would sort of shatter, layers, like puff pastry, but for real, not the box stuff. And
that, if you're saying real puff pastry that shatters, that's like a lot of work. That's a lot of muscle into that.
I remember making pierogies with my babka, and she had this bowl that you had to extend your arms around. I don't even know if I could buy a bowl like that anymore. And she would have it on her hip with one arm around this bowl, and she would put in her right hand and fold the dough over and over and over, and it was a lot of heavy dough. And so this big bowl would be on an angle on her hip. And I remember her giving it to me and showing me how to do it, and I did it for 30 seconds. I was like, oh, my arm is so sore. I was like, a teenager, and she would chastise me. She'd be like, oh, what for you? You need to be stronger.
Oh my gosh. I love that.
She put me to shame.
That's a lot of love going into that food right there.
But stuff like that. And then anyway, I as a teenager, I basically lived off Slurpees from 7-Eleven and cinnamon buns from my high school. The ladies would make homemade cinnamon buns in the morning, and I would eat cinnamon bun for breakfast and Slurpees for the rest of the day, and probably, I don't know, absolute garbage. And I felt horrible.
Oh my gosh.
I had like issues with my skin. I felt terrible. I joined the military and sort of went from, I guess you would say like mainstream healthy. Like I would eat, traditional food, but not like fast food and stuff like that. I would just eat whatever home cooked food. And then I kind of I experimented with vegetarianism and veganism. And I remember it was winter here in Canada, and I was eating only fruit for breakfast. And I was freezing.
What an endeavor.
I was cold all the time. And I started getting like bladder infections and things I had never had before in my life. And I wrote about that in my book too, where I went to a German naturopath and he was like, "What are you doing?" And got me on eggs and all that sort of thing. And then I guess you would say sort of like a paleo-esque sort of, because I didn't eat any grains. So my children were sort of raised initially in their first few years outside of the medical system, which I'm really grateful that I made that decision because I didn't have anyone around me making that decision at the time. So I actually think that was quite a saving grace. They were raised on sort of, those like they had milk, but it was just normal milk. And I made everything from scratch. But then when so my oldest daughter now is 33. And so by the time they were both breastfed, they were all breastfed. And, but by the time by the time my youngest daughter came, I was like exclusively buying organic foods, but I was still eating grains and that sort of thing. And then that sort of morphed. I dropped the grains because all of us were having sort of different tummy issues. I would have done things differently, but then I found a farmer, and I found out about farm food, and I found out about what we were just talking about, sort of like the problems in the commercial food system, and I wanted to avoid that. So we were going to farms and buying our eggs, and we were going to farms and buying our meat, and raw milk is insanely challenging in Canada. It's not legal anywhere in Canada. So I did find a goat farmer, and then we started moving around with the military more, and every time we would move, I would find a new set of farmers. And so things just sort of, the more I got to know and understand about the food system, and I was very, at that time, impassioned. I had gone back to school to be a nutritionist, and I was giving presentations. I remember we were living in Alberta, and I gave a presentation on the real cost of food, and it was just breaking down like the cost of a tomato, just using something accessible.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
I'm scared to even see that.
Well, just what the subsidies, and if you take something like canola oil or something, or soybean, you could even make now in today's world. At that time, it wasn't such a big thing, but it could be exponentially more. So I just got more involved in it that way. And then as I wrote about it in my book, I feel like I'm being really long-winded right now. I'm trying to shore things up.
This is what we're here for. No, this is what we're here for.
And then I met a farmer. I was buying food from farmers for years, but then I met a farmer who actually butchered his own meat. And then that changed everything for me. It not only because he butchered his own meat, but just who he was. And he became like, one of my best friends and a real mentor to me, and brought me into my understanding and connection with food in a way that was beyond sort of just, going to the farm, buying my stuff, leaving the farm. Yeah.
So far.
So
yes. And the scene you put in your book, there's multiple scenes that highlight things you've mentioned here. Like with Troy, when you said you and him, he was in medical school, I think you said at this time, and you went to that farm and he said, oh, the earth is like the gut. And I was like, yeah, Troy, when I saw that, because I remember thinking that when I first started learning about soil, and I was like, wait a minute, microbes. Like I was like, the soil is the gut of the world. And, of course, with bad gut health, the fruit isn't as prosperous. And if we can heal soil, there's a lot of flourishing that can come behind that. I love that he said that. And your story with Richard, which everybody should go in there and read that scene where you went with him on the hunt, as it were, was incredible. Given the experiences that I've had out here on our farm now raising animals, and it is we name our animals too, like you do. I saw once that you said you put the names on the packages, and I thought, yeah, that's right. So we do that now. We put their names on the package. And we've raised one beef steer. We've only raised one. And he was our youngest daughter's, like her baby. She absolutely loved him. And the day a friend was going to do the slaughter, then the day before that, or the day of that, I forget what day, I went down with her. I think she would have been 6 maybe, and went down with her to visit him. And she had brought this little purse that she had, and then she took out of it a piece of paper, and she's showing him the paper, and she said, it's a picture of him and his dad and his mom and on the grass, and this is where he's going. And I was like,
gosh.
Oh my, I wasn't expecting, I wasn't ready for that. And then when the first thing we prepared from him was his heart. And so I made Allison's oat cakes, and then I cooked the heart and I shredded it, and then we served that with sauerkraut on top. It's perfect. That is my perfect meal right there. And so we put it in front of her and we said, you get the first, you're going to get the first piece. And so she took the first bite and she said, well, he's in my belly now because he loves me.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it made me realize the communion of food. Like when Jesus said, this is my body broken for you. And then she took the meat and she was like, this is him. And I get nourished from this because he loved me. And I was like, that is forever the way I'm going to look at this experience. And
that's brilliant. And she's brilliant. What a dear heart. She is.
I feel like if we had just picked up, meat somewhere, and of course that was the reality of our life for a long time, and that was good too. But she wouldn't have had that, and I wouldn't have had that observational moment. It was, it was really something.
Gorgeous. It's amazing what those.
I thought of her with the scene with Richard because he felt like that.
I wish that there was some way to bottle that sentiment and that innocence, and to be able to share that with grown-ups who are, really, I think, not everyone, but I mean, in my circles anyway, a lot of people are earnest and they want to understand, why, what is it? How can you, what kind of place are you in where you can put the name of an animal you cared for 4 years on a package and eat it with joy and reverence? And I understand that. And I guess that's what I try to connect people to. I'm not trying to sell my book or whatever. My writing in general, or even just speaking with people, is because I feel like that was stolen from us. And it's a hard thing to understand if you've never experienced it, because we've been sold this bill of goods that the things that have been taken were actually good to have taken, because it protects us and it saves us from these hard things. But that's where the richness is. And I don't know how to have a deep reverence for an animal without keeping in my mind that this animal gave its life so that I can be nourished. I have to have that at the forefront, because otherwise I'm just mechanically eating and swallowing the food if I'm not considering and holding gratitude for where that food came from.
Yeah. You did a good job talking about that on your Instagram back in the day. And I feel like I was able to absorb it, and then I was regurgitating it somehow. And a friend of mine who was vegetarian for a long time, I didn't realize, but she said, well, I saw what you were saying. And she started with liver. That was where she started. She actually raises her own animals, but she wasn't at the time eating any of it herself. She sold them. I would buy them from her because she raised them very well. But she said, I had said something about, Tara talked about like our cultural fear of death being associated with our inability to comprehend, death being even positive in any way. And she said that was her number one fear, and she hadn't really realized it. And so we thought about that for a while, and but it is, I often feel like I have more in common with the vegans of our society than like my fellow meat eaters, because they're trying so hard to do it right. And I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
I do understand that feeling.
I completely agree. And over the years, I've had so many people contact me and tell me I was a vegan or I was a vegetarian. And I just considered something you said. And I love that. And I think that there is a way that we can appeal to that desire to do things right. So I understand a lot of people that are vegan or vegetarian. Having been there, I was horrified when I saw how the industrial food system, especially the caretaking of animals, caretaking in quotes, the raising of these animals as just cold commodities, is horrific. Yeah. It was horrific to me, and I wanted no part of it. So I completely understand that sentiment, and I respect it. But there's another way where we can still be connected, not opt out entirely, or not have to completely ignore or negate what's going on and still participate and just eat coldly. Like it doesn't have to be either, we're just part of the commercial food system and I don't want to think about it and I don't, just give me my burger and leave me alone kind of thing. Or I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I think hopefully, I try anyway to show the things that for me was taught to me. I'm only receiving other people's experiences and knowledge, and we're all evolving in this life together. And so I think that it's incumbent on us to share these things, and that there is a way in order to respect this life and still be part of the design that we were created to be a part of. Even in this warped and twisted culture we have right now, we can still do that and find our way. And in that, as we just talked about, sort of finding the richness in there of being a part of something. Not separating ourselves from it.
Do you love oats? Want to try your hand at a traditional Scottish oat fermentation? Suans is just that. It was made in Scotland for centuries and will give you both a creamy, easy to digest porridge and a tangy probiotic drink. My video course, Suans, the Scottish Oat Ferment, over at the Fermentation School, will guide you through everything you need to know to create these two ancestral foods in your own kitchen, no matter what equipment you have. Head to ancestralkitchen.com/Suans, ancestralkitchen.com/Sewans, SOWANS, or click the link in the show notes to get a 10% discount automatically applied.
I think we want that, right? We want to be part of something. Everybody, we have that kind of yearning. But then we're also told how much better it is if we can just do everything from home with a button and not need anybody and not, you even said this in your book, we don't want to be obliged or beholden. Actually, I'm going to pull up Allison's question because that's the exact quote that she wanted me to. I asked her, since Allison doesn't get to be here today, is there anything you want to ask Tara? And she said, yes. I'm going to read you her quote because it works here perfectly. She said, Allison says, in your book, you said, quote, supermarkets ask nothing of us other than our money, end quote. That sentence really, really struck me. It is very true. The transactional nature of life in the modern world is so apparently clean. Just give your money and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. You aren't beholden to anyone. You don't have to do anything for anyone. You don't have to feel guilty about anything. Just give your money. Might you riff a bit on what you feel we should be offering back to those who grow our food other than our money, and how the idea that the only thing supermarkets ask of us is our money, how that is affecting society, what that means for the whole of the supply chain? Big question. So for context, Allison, there's rare to very little or nothing that she picks up at supermarkets, but she lives in town in England, and so she shops from her farmers. Obviously, there are things she can and does grow, herbs and whatnot, but she's not, raising cattle or something. So that's kind of the genesis of this question. And I am very interested to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, I would just say that I think people like Allison are integral. We're not all going to live on farms, and we're not all going to raise our food. And we certainly do not have to, as long as we have robust communities around us with farmers that are being supported that can and will and want to do it, right? The farms can't survive if people are not buying their whatever it is that they're producing. So I think that's really important, because sometimes it's like this ideal of, getting on a farm and doing it all yourself, and nobody does it all themselves. I was under that impression for a long time in my own, this self-sufficiency myth. No. And
anybody who's coming into the homestead movement hold on, the dog is chewing a screwdriver. Let me see if I can get him in the mood.
But I think that food should be relational. I think that the big thing that's missing is the relationship and the responsibility. There's an obligation as an eater to take responsibility. The supermarket takes that away, and we think that's taking away sort of the guilt, or having to look at what actually has gone into the food. There's a label that tells us our ingredients, but it doesn't say this food was grown on this farm, and this is what they do on this farm, and this is the way that they, these are the employees they have, and this is where the employees come from, and this is the quality of life the employees have. And there's so many secrets hidden, and the disclosure is ingredients. We don't even know where those come from, what labs they're created in, all these sort of things. So there's absolutely no relationship to anything. And when there's no relationship, there's no accountability. I don't have to be responsible for what I do in this relationship. And so everything is shrouded, and we are given this guilt-free experience of, the only thing that is requested of us or demanded of us is that we hand over money at the end of that transaction. That's it. And it's hollow. I can apply that to all sorts of things. You can anything that you do that the only requirement of ourselves is to hand over money really, I mean, whether that's at a gas tank or at a bar or, people paying for sex, I mean, you are taking the soul out of it because there's no relationship. There's no depth to it. There's no requirement, obligation from us and no expectation from them. You go to the grocery store and there's a pack of ground beef. Well, I can't hold the grocery store responsible if that animal lived in a feedlot and was, lived a miserable existence with poop up to its knees and was cold and all these other things and transported here and done this. That's not the grocery store's fault. All of that stuff, all of that history, all of that responsibility is completely wiped away. And it's called convenience. And it takes us away from the intimacy and the relationships, not only with people, but in our communities. I'm not building my community. I'm not reinforcing anything. I'm not supporting anything. I'm paying a faceless industry, a business, to bring me food and to put the label on the food, and this drives me nutty, it really does, is all of these labels that pop up, I mean, grass-fed, that's the latest one, but I mean, over the decades, I've seen all sorts of labels that come in like a phase. Now it's like no seed oils or, whatever's trendy. They'll grab onto it, they'll manipulate it, and people will say, if I had $1 for everyone that said to me, well, it says grass-fed. And I'm like, every cow on planet Earth is grass-fed at some point in its life. Like, it's a meaningless term. I need to say, okay, it was grass-fed when it was 3 months old and it was on grass for a couple months before they took it away and put it into the first grow lot. Like, I need to know, I need questions answered. I want to know about these things. I want to know how old it was. I want to know all these things. And all of that is taken away to give a business maximum profit at the farmers and all along this chain, this food supply chain, all of that taken away. So I don't know if I'm answering your question very succinctly, but I just think that in relationships, we have requirements of ourselves, and we can't just be focused on what someone's supposed to give to us, but we're not in a relationship in that grocery store. We are just consumers, cold, hard consumers, going to get the stuff we need to feed ourselves without any of the other things that go into the richness and the abundance and the honesty of having a relationship with someone that is giving us the food that nourishes us so that we can be the full expression of who we were meant to be. And that may sound grandiose, but I absolutely believe that food and our connection to the world that we live in is very much what shapes us and who we are and how we present ourselves to be, how we can be either fully embodied or not. And I mean, do an experiment with yourself, drink a Slurpee for breakfast and have a pizza pop for lunch, and tell me, and then get your husband to put something challenging in front of you and tell me how it goes, right? I mean, but there's people that eat these foods that fill us but never nurture us. And in order for us, I believe anyway, to be as fully here as we can, we have to get as close to the design of us as we are. No one puts a tiger in a zoo and feeds it kibble and expects that tiger is going to be the same one that's like in the wild. And yet here we are living these zoo lives with our zoo kibble in these zoo buildings wearing, climate controlled everything. And we wonder why we are not fully embodied. And I think that all of these things that we can do brings us closer to that. And I'll probably never get there. I'll never be like my ancestors were hundreds of years ago without the stuff in the air and so, the whole gamut of things, but there are things that I can do, and it's incumbent on me to do those things. I feel very responsible to the animals that nourish me, to the soil that feeds us all. There's things that I'm responsible for in that relationship, and I honor that. And yes, it's harder, but it is integral to my sense of self-worth as a person.
Yes, I love that, and I know Allison will agree. If in a world where you and Allison were in the same regional area, say, and she was coming, you were the person who was selling the meat and she was coming to you to shop, in what way could she show up and not just drop her cash? Like, in her heart, she's not the cold hard consumer.
Yeah.
So how is that? How does she not be that person? Like, if she comes and brings her cash to you and then she walks away with, a side of lamb or whatever. Is there something you feel that people can do? I mean, you did say relational, and I know that that's something I harp on all the time, which is get to know your farmer and like the names of their kids and the, like just become a part of their life and let them be a part of yours. And it does feel very different. But what would you say to her in that regard? Or would you say anything?
I guess it is just that is, well, first of all, I think just supporting local farmers who are doing something. I mean, being there, going out of her way, not, accessing that food in that way, having those relationships and those conversations where you can find, what sort of maybe ways that you can fit into it. I know, like, when our daughters were younger, before we ever had a farm, I had a milk share that I was distributing, and I used to go to the farmer early, and I would just wash jars with her because she would, it was a jar return day, and so there'd be enormous amounts, hundreds and hundreds of jars, and I just washed jars with her because I asked, like, what can I do to help other than just be picking up milk? And that sort of went on with different farms. And sometimes, sometimes farmers are like, no, I'm good. We had like organic vegetable farmers in Alberta, and she made fermented kimchi. And so on those days, I would go over to her place and I would just give a hand. And it allowed me to, and I remember she was so delighted with that she gave me some of the seed that they had brought over from China for this cabbage that was really important to her. And she said it was the only way to make, this kimchi with this type of cabbage that she really liked. She thought it was different than what we had here. But anyway, just I think being able to develop those relationships, and maybe the farmer doesn't want anything. Maybe they don't need anything. But being willing to do it. I know, like, I have a friend here who has a little farm store. And she has, like, it's just an honor system. So you can go get your eggs or frozen meat from her farm store. And during COVID, here, when everyone was panic buying, she had people showing up and clearing out her deep freezers. Like, someone came and spent thousands of dollars and just took everything out of her deep freezers and paid for it, but she didn't know who the person was. She was just really upset by that because her regular customers that would just come and buy, maybe a week's worth of meat or something. There's some, now someone just came and voraciously bought that. And that to me is like such a example of that mindset of just sort of like, people were freaking out and buying their toilet paper and doing all this, and the meat was sort of, people were flying off the shelves. So someone went to a farm store, looked it up probably online or something, and just bought an enormous quantities and cleared them out. And everybody else that was in relationship and was just consistently supporting this farmer, now was in this situation where there was just scarcity, where and it's to me that is a clear like example of that delineation between the mindset of someone that is just using a farmer as a source. It's that commodity mindset. It's that transactional. I gave you the money, you gave me the stuff, instead of like another customer that would, because they're in relationship, because they know her, because they know, oh, they just brought a beef in 2 weeks ago, and I can get the bones this time. That sort of thing. It's a hard thing to really describe, but it's just almost like falling into a rhythm with the farmer, whether that be for, milk or all these other things. I know too with her, there's a business that gets organic spelt from her, and they sell their sourdough bread, but whenever they come, they also bring her sourdough bread. Like, so I think that's just that interaction that brings not just because of the transaction itself, but also just the relationship and how we can be involved in our community to make sure that the people that are feeding us are actually able to thrive and feed themselves as well. So,
yeah. I see that, and it does make me realize that even if she's only able to go every week and make her purchase and leave her money, it's not the same thing anymore. Yeah. And it is relational by virtue of the fact that now she and that farmer are intricately linked. She's part of their mortgage payment, and their, how she has dinner every night of the week. As opposed to in a grocery store, you come and go. Nobody knows your name, and doesn't make any difference. I was thinking about that, like that meat thing you said, what happened to that farmer's freezer. With this conversation was happening in our Discord discussion group over the last couple of days, which was during the whole Great Panic. I was trying to tell people, because, all the farms that I was going to were now suddenly selling out because all the grocery stores were out of things. And I was telling people, if you want these farms to be here, you have to shop here all the time, because that infrastructure builds and that, relationship and dynamic evolves. And, when that farm reaches its carrying capacity, then there's room for another family farm to emerge. And But it all takes customers, like you were saying, it takes a lot of people shopping, because that is important. And, maybe the lawyer's not a farmer, but it's nice to have lawyers around sometimes. But nobody seemed to learn that, because then as soon as the grocery stores were back up and running, then they're back out of the farms, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I was talking about that with my friend the other day, about now where we are. It just, because I was talking to my older daughter who lives in Virginia, and I guess they were having like a big snowstorm or something. And so
it's going down over there.
She was telling me how people were like, the grocery store shelves were getting cleared out, and people were just like frantic. And I was thinking, didn't we just do this? Like, did nobody learn anything about maybe just making sure, like shoring these things up? But no, I think everybody, unfortunately, I shouldn't say everybody, but the masses, most people went back to that way of being dependent, buying a week's worth of groceries or whatever at a time. It's too bad, because, I think that was sort of a missed opportunity for sure.
What would you say to somebody, because this was me at one point, and I'm always unsure like what I would have heard or not at any given time. But what do you say to somebody who's very much immersed in grocery store system right now? That's the only. Oh, hello. Sliding down the stairs on his belly. Sister's coming to snuff him. Yes. Camille, can you take him outside for a minute? Yeah. His boots and jacket are in that basket right there. You can take him upstairs so he can go into the yard.
I built him a big castle.
Oh, I bet he loves it.
Yes, he does. He's climbing all over.
Good. All right, I'll start that question over. What would you say to somebody who is very much in a grocery store model? And that was definitely me at one point. And I think you said it was pretty much you at one point too. And it's the culture we've been immersed in. And there's so many paradigms that change on the way out, but we can't have every epiphany at once. What would you say to someone who's listening to this and is saying, yeah, I do like the idea of getting out of this grocery store system. Where to begin, what to do? I mean, there's just so many.
I mean, you don't. I don't think anyone should do anything by just doing this major overhaul, because it just seems so impossible, really, when you look at it like that. But I would just say finding what's around you, that, like the farms around you and what they might have to offer that you can replace. And so I remember the first thing that I started buying was chicken and eggs. Chicken and eggs. That's what, there was a old farmer.
Which came first?
I don't know. We got them at the same time. I didn't have to solve that problem.
The answer. We finally know.
But yeah, I that's what we had around us. We were living on a little base, a remote base, army base, and there was an old guy and he was raising chicken and eggs. And all I know is he used to go on and on about them spraying grain, and he wasn't buying the sprayed grain. And I don't think anyone even talked about GMOs. And maybe they weren't around or in the food supply at that time. And that was good enough for me. We bought his chicken, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And these eggs are wonderful. And so what if you just start with, something you eat commonly? Like if you eat chicken a lot, what if you start looking for chicken? And, I think that I think that just taking it incrementally, things sort of naturally unfold, because you don't really have to convince yourself of anything, because it becomes glaringly evident that what you've been sold at the grocery store there's something not right. Like, that is actually not, you don't have to work so hard to get food to taste good, really. Like,
amen to that. Oh my gosh. If that's anything we can take away from ancestral food cooking, is that it doesn't take these complicated ingredients. And you cook something with just a little salt and everybody's like, oh, you brought down the moon. But it was the sun and the grass and the moon and rain and movement. Like, there's a lot of things involved, but they didn't happen in the kitchen.
It's so true. It's so true. I say that all the time. I mean, really, good food requires very simple cooking. Just to make it shine, because it's full. That's the beauty of all of this, is like, food that is really nutrient dense, because it's been raised well, tastes good. Like, you really have to do very little.
There's no masking it. There's no trying to, you might not be trying to sell your book, but I am. I'm going to grab a quote from your book, because I have about 48. I don't even know which one I want to pull. I have so many marked here. But I like this one. It's from your chapter In My Kitchen, which is, I love, beyond inspirational, this chapter. So you said, in this era of addictions and distractions, I have heard the words, food is not love, spoken often. Oh, but food is love. Real food. Real love. It is true that we can't fill the hungry voids in our souls with items meant to drown, but not quench. But real food, what I call God's food as opposed to man's food, is love when it is consecrated with our intention and attention. That is the role of the cook in the kitchen. the blessed transmuter of food into loving nourishment. Oh, man. Chills. Well, I love a lot about this paragraph because there's a lot to pull out here. But I'm thinking of your babka with the the dough and my daughter eating the beef heart and saying, "Oh, he's letting us eat him because he loves us," and the intention that you feel not just from the person who put it in the pot, but from the hands that prepared it and in terms of growing it. That's a lot. And I feel like and then you eat that outside.
Yeah.
There's a lot here.
Yeah.
That I really enjoy.
I mean, I think back to my babka who died in her late 90s and the food that she fed us, and she wasn't emotionally evocative. She wasn't, she was very kind and would hug me and take care of me when I was sick. But so much of her energy, 9 children's worth, went into her food and the care that she took and wanting people to eat. If you didn't eat enough, she'd say, "What for are you not eating? You have to eat more." But it is absolutely an honor when I can feed something to somebody, I can give them something. I mean, when you really just pause and think about that the design of us, God's design, that the soil would nurture these plants that feed this enormous beast that we can then take the flesh of and be nourished by, and the plants as well, and we can be nourished by these things, and that I can take my hands and make myself now a part of this and offer it to somebody. I'm one little piece, just one little, one little link in the chain, but I can now take that and take that energy and honor that energy, honor the gift of it, and add something from myself into it as well. And then I can offer it to you, Andrea, and you take it and put it in your mouth. What a blessed interaction that is. How intimate is that? To take something and make it a part of us. And when we just treat it like this is this hole in our face that we shove stuff back into, and it's going to go into our body and somehow nourish us. No, we talk about getting your fat soluble vitamins and your this and your that and all these things. But if our energy is that we take these foods, no matter how beautiful they are, and we just shove them back, and we're trying to get our calories and we're trying to get our macros and do all this, and we take away what is most significant and sacred about that moment, we can't really get to that level of full nurturance in a way that is beyond the physical. I'm full, I'm satiated. How are you really deeply satiated? And I don't think we have to eat every meal a monk and stuff, but just taking that and having that awareness in us of how intimate and beautiful this design is, and honoring that. And feeling the love in it. I want you, when I've made something for you, to feel my love for you in that meal. If I can give that to you, I want you to receive that. And I think
it turns us into a machine.
Does.
This is the electrical input. This is the battery, that's powering you up instead of. Thank you, chicken. Instead of the humans.
Yeah.
That eating like a human and eating like the people who prepared the foods are humans. yeah, your book gives, I feel like there's a point that you come to, in the beginning with eating ancestral food, you kind of need some recipes or some ideas or, an okay list or a don't go here list. And then over time, I feel like you push deeper and deeper into that experience. Like I get teased for this a lot because I always bring it up, but the idea that health bro out there says, well, the path is you eat an avocado every day. And I'm just like, that excludes everything about everything. Like, it isn't the avocado that is the God that's going to, the avocado is a part of a life in some places. And there's so much context involved in that, but it's not like the avocado is the only path. And it really irritates me when I see that health bro stuff online because it disregards regionality and seasonality and time of your life and what's okay for you and not okay for you right now. And I just feel like there's so much just gets lost. But when you start, it is good to have, those kind of ideas of things and then push farther and farther out. And I feel like for somebody who's trying to push farther and farther out, your book is going to come in and probably speak to a lot of those aspects of their life because it isn't really a book on recipes, and it's sort of an expression of where this years and years of this kind of living has taken you, which, and you do address intense grief in this book. So anybody who's reading it should know that. And yet it's part, like you said, part of the sinews that bind. It's part of what holds, your whole story together. It isn't complete without that story brought in and understood in so far as we, the outside observer, can understand it. But I really do enjoy it. So I am really thankful that you wrote it. I just don't like reading things on screens. So
yeah, I have a hard time reading things on screens. I can't concentrate on them properly, and I, as you know, had I had a nicely sized Substack, and I've chosen to leave that, and I'm hoping I can. I don't know. I keep saying I want to find a little book binder that's working in some dusty corner of the world that shuffles around and can put what I write onto paper instead of onto screen. So we'll see how that turns out. But it's a challenge.
Well, this is a good indication in that direction. Yeah. It's hard, and I feel like Allison and I talk about this like every time we get together, the push and pull between, if we want people to, we can have the message and go live in the austere monastery somewhere and enjoy it for ourselves, but sometimes you're called to get it out a little bit farther than just your immediate circle, and I feel like you're one of those people who is called to do that because you have spent a lot of time being able to articulate and shape into words these ideas. I know a bunch of us on the podcast are reading Against the Machine by Paul Kingsnorth right now, and he's one of those people that you're like, oh wow, I'm only a few chapters in, but everybody kept telling me, you're always quoting his book, and I haven't read it yet, so okay, I better read it. But it seems like he's also one of those people who's articulating the ideas that you're talking about, and I'm Allison, and so the push and pull between like we want to get this out there, but also then what does that mean about life with the computer and how to do that?
I feel like
with our integrity intact.
And I love that these conversations are taking place, and I think they're taking place a lot. I think there's a lot of us. I know when I came out and said, like, I'm getting off this internet business, that so many people contacted me and were like, how? Or, oh, I wish I could do it. So many people saying, I wish I could do it. And and people recognizing that it's not healthy for them to be there. It really astounded me how many people responded to me with those types of responses. And
Wow.
yeah, and I really have the sense, and maybe because I'm in my mid-50s now, and I've always been a bit of a renegade and done things differently, and
No, really?
yeah. You didn't know.
Didn't see that coming.
And I am just the personality that I can do things and not worry about what people around me think. And the more I've done that in my life, the more I'm cemented into that. That's fine with me. And so I don't mind being alone, or maybe one of a few on a new way of doing something. And I really have the strong sense that a lot of us are moving away from this internet era. I'm not saying the internet's going to die or go anywhere, but I see so many of us that are like, this isn't for me. And we're going back to community building, but it's going to be in a different way. And maybe we don't know what that's going to look like exactly. And maybe there's going to be a lot of fumbling around and doing things and hoping other people catch up with us, or hoping other people are like, okay, I see a light over there and I'm not really liking what I have over here. So I'm going to start moving in that direction. I really have the sense that that's where we're at right now. I think that things are shifting and they have shifted, and it's just a matter of people starting to realize and take account of are these practices that I'm doing, these habits, are they really enriching my life? And if they're not, then how can I do things differently? And I feel really hopeful about it, actually, Andrea.
I don't think I know anybody who's like, no, I'm loving this, being online all the time. I can't think of a single person. Not everybody's in the same place of I want to disengage fully, but a lot of people are like moving that way, like dropping off Instagram, which, by the way, do you think that's why Instagram is making fake accounts of you? Because are they a publicly traded company and they need to show like memberships are increasing? Do you think? And do you think people are just disappearing? They're like, make fake accounts and then don't let people tell us it's illegal.
I obviously could not prove that it's Instagram doing it, but Meta, who owns Instagram and Facebook, they're publicly traded, right? So, I mean, it doesn't look good for them when I'm pretty sure the last statistic was like 81% of the content on there is AI or AI augmented. So it doesn't mean it's... And so,
it'd be interesting to see that compared to like that doesn't probably mean an 80% increase in content. You know what I mean? It's like real content is
dwindling.
Like in crude numbers dwindling. Yeah. And then the AI is taking its place.
But why are we doing that to each other? I mean, these accounts...
I don't know.
And people are like, oh, I can't get it together and I can't do this. And they hold up these people that have these huge funds behind them, and half of it's not real and it's AI. And we're saying look what I'm doing. And then people just feel like utter failures because nobody can measure up to this gloss and simulacra that they're passing off as real life. It's just cruel. And yet we participate, and we have a choice not to participate, and to create something of actual genuine, flawed, bruised, imperfect meaning in our lives. And I think that even if we don't know what that looks like, that we're not going to do it until we start rejecting what isn't, what's making us feel bad, and the social media that's pulling us apart from each other, and there's nothing social about it at all. It gives us this illusion of connection, and yet the second you get off, you're like, ugh, why did I do that? Or I feel bad, or
Whereas if you sat at a table. Like if Gary and I sat at you and Troy's table and we talked until midnight and drank whatever you put in front of us and ate whatever we had brought and couldn't stop talking. We wouldn't walk away being like, I feel so disgusting.
Exactly.
Like, why did I just sink? Like, we would walk away feeling like I can go on.
Exactly.
I can continue because this type of connection exists in the world. And it's so, I mean, we have Sunday dinners when we can. My sister and I get together at least once a month, and we call it a feast. And we just talk for hours, like our two families. And we had a new couple at our church over the other day for one of those dinners. And when I looked at the clock later, I realized we sat at the table for 4 hours. Like, it's not like it took us that long to eat, but that's how long we sat there. And nobody went away feeling like, ugh, gross. Or we just all felt like, wow, we learned so much about each other. We saw each other. And
Exactly. Yeah.
And if we had just been like texting or even, it still wouldn't be the same.
Yes,
I feel like that also contributed to when I was getting off, was because, like you said, we see these sort of polished versions. And I always try, I don't know if anyone, my Instagram still exists. So if anybody went and looked at it, you wouldn't see perfection. There would, but then I felt like, here I am trying to balance, like, oh, this looked pretty and cool. I took a picture, but then people are like, oh my gosh, your life is so perfect. So then I take a picture. I'm like, look, this is how life is kind of hard. And they're like, what you need to do is get it together. And I was just like, ugh, like, there's just no,
it's so true.
If you try to be real and raw, then the internet comes at you with like, let me fix this for you and tell you what you're doing wrong. And then if you show what you're doing right, people are like, you make such an impossible standard. None of us can achieve it. There's just no winning. So then I was like, it's because the medium is the message. No matter what, I can only give you a piece. But if we can talk in real life, even you and I are talking, but you still only see of me what I want you to see, right? Like, and I only know of you what you shared through your, which is a lot, but through your Instagram and your book, So even then, it's not the same as if we were, actual neighbors. And
absolutely,
well, actually, if you really want to know me, just talk to my kids, and they will tell you everything.
Yeah, kids will do that for you.
They do. Yeah. They really do.
Hey, you washing the dishes. Been there. You've heard Allison and I talk over and over about her love of rye sourdough bread. Well, I might actually call it an obsession, but that's neither here nor there. Now you can make Allison's rye sourdough in your own kitchen with her as your teacher. And she's a really good teacher. Rye is economical, it's delicious, and full of nutrients and low in gluten. There's a reason why it has been a darling of bread bakers for centuries. Make it into sourdough, as Allison will show you in her course, Rye Sourdough Bread, Mastering the Basics. And you've got an amazing, tasty, and nutritious staple in your kitchen. It's traditional and it's nutritional. In this course, you'll learn everything there is to know about how she creates and maintains her rye sourdough starter, all about whole grain sourdough rye, including the key differences between baking with rye and wheat, how to make 2 loaves, an everyday rye sandwich bread, and a delicious Russian-style dark rye loaf, and what to do with your sourdough discard, including video walkthroughs for sourdough pancakes and a tasty, sweet, spiced cake. Head to www.ancestralkitchen.com/rye.
Before we end our conversation, let me ask you a practical question that isn't practical, which is your wood stove.
Yeah.
You talk about it in the book, and what I drew from that was also the time it took you to get to the point in your life where you would even desire something like a wood stove, and the absolute inefficiency that introduces to life intentionally. But then also in the practical sense, like, we have a wood stove that we used to heat our house, and it's a whole thing.
Yep.
Having firewood stacked and split, and somebody's got to bring it in, and you got to start it, and the house gets cold, and all these things. So I'm just want to hear a little bit about your life with wood stove, if you don't mind.
Well, we had our first wood stove. So at our first farm, that was our whole heating in the house too. There was no duct work or anything like that in the house. We just had a wood cook stove. And I remember when we got it, we bought it from the Amish people here in our province. And a friend of mine, a couple who are in their 60s and have lived off-grid their entire lives, and they had the same stove. And so their names are Bonnie and Charlie. And they Charlie came over. They came over one day when we got our stove, and he just started pulling things off it, ripping out governors. Like, you don't need this. This is some thing they started doing the last few years, and it's not going to get hot enough. And he was like, he's like a savant with his like mechanical abilities. And so he had brought like these little plates that he like took off what they had and put this on, and took off the venting and put on chains, and he like rigged it up. And Bonnie came and spent 2 whole days with me showing me how to cook and on this, because it's all I had. I didn't have an oven. I had no hot plate. It was trial by fire, literally, because it was our heat and our only way to cook. And I was so overwhelmed, and it was such a challenge to me. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that Bonnie came and spent all that time with me and showed me, here's the hot part of the oven. Here's the cold part. You don't have a temperature that goes from 2 to 10. You have a pot you slide to this part of the oven and this part, and you're going to get to know it. And yours is, even though we had the exact same stove, mine was very different than hers. Like, maybe in the subsequent years, the metal was different, or mine had different hot spots than hers did. And so they also taught us about wood. When you want a really roaring hot fire, you use, where we live, this type of wood called ironwood. It is scorching hot wood. It never really gets bigger than this diameter of the tree. But when you put in ironwood, you are lighting an inferno of heat. Like the whole house is sweating. And it was, and then here's what you're going to put in because we have hardwoods. So, oak, or if you're going to be using like poplar, it's a colder wood, but you could, depending on the size of it. So all of that whole education came into it too, which was not something I expected at all, learning about different wood species. And Bonnie says, if I'm cooking a pie, I want to make sure that, I have the oven going for an hour before. Now I've got it dropped down to coals. Now I'm making sure I'm going to save my oak when I'm making like a pie. And when I'm making like a long simmering stew, I'm going to do a different wood species and get a different type of fire going than when I'm using if I want to all of a sudden heat up some pork lard or whatever to make French fries, or, just something that would be quick. And there's times when I have to open all my windows in the house because the fire is getting so hot, and it's minus 30 degrees here. But the windows are open in the winter, which I love that. And people would say,
absolutely, yes. Get that fresh, clean
like when
air
do you ever
in?
get to do that on central heat? So that's how I learned to use my wood stove. And then when we moved to our second farm, the area in the kitchen, the people here did not have a wood stove, and I had to put a wood stove back, a wood cook stove. We have wood stoves in different parts of the house, but a wood cook stove, but it had to be smaller. And so I got a cast iron one. The other one was steel, because it will hold its heat longer. And it was a whole new thing again. Like, so now I'm like,
wow,
what is this thing? Like and I didn't like it, and it became like a whole thing as well. And I had to learn, this stove actually needs to get a lot hotter for a lot longer before I can start cooking things in the oven. And it was just a whole new education of learning how to use it. And this house does have heat outside of that outside of a wood cook stove, which actually is nice if we go somewhere and I don't have to get my daughter to rely just on like the heat.
Yeah.
But so it became a really big thing because it was sort of the whole heart of the home. It was our survival, not only with actually the heat, but the food that came from it as well. And it was like right in the center of the house. And so everyone sort of converges around it. It was like a way that I was able to actually build my relationship with Bonnie, because she didn't stop hearing from me for a year after that about, I kept burning everything and what was wrong with me. So there is something very connecting for me to wake up in the morning and our house is really cold. And the first thing I do is I go to the wood cook stove. My husband goes to the wood stove in the other room. He gets that fire going. I'm still half asleep and I'm feeding the wood into the wood cook stove that we have. And I'm getting that fire going, and it's got a glass door. My first one didn't have a glass door. And so I'm in my kitchen and I'm cooking, and I can see that fire, and that radiant heat is warming my bones in a way that no other heat can warm your bones. And there's just something very, fire, right? It's very connecting to us, and it's very traditional, and it creates an energy in a room that is hard to really describe. But when you're in a room where there's fire, you can feel it. You can feel it in your bones. You can feel it. There's a calming and a grounding and a centering sort of, that light sort of dancing across the walls while I'm making breakfast. It feels like, it feels connecting to my ancestors in many ways. Like, this is something that we would have shared. So much of my life doesn't look like what their lives would have looked like, but this carries through. And I think it wouldn't quite feel like a home to me without that.
Do people sometimes get alarmed at your desire to be so inefficient and
probably
you use such a and maybe they keep it to themselves?
Like,
I already know she don't care.
I have little tolerance for things, this greenwashing idea, and yet people will, buy food from a grocery store or not think twice about wearing plastic pants or whatever. I have my life is so tied to sort of the design of things that's what I use as my measure, not some sort of politically or monetarily designed system so that someone makes profit off it.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the last place you want to hang your hat, because that's going to change every time the wind blows. Dorothy Hartley wrote these books. I don't know if you've ever read them. They're older, like Lost Country Life or Food in England. Allison got me turned on to those, and she went around England kind of observing and collecting the old ways that people were living as it was beginning to die out before her eyes. And so the books are pretty fascinating. And she has a section where she talks in one of, I think it's Lost Country Life, where she talks about cooking on the stove. And she says, well, if you know what you're about, you can get home and have water boiling in 20 minutes. Otherwise, you're not that good. I was like, oh my, I have a long way to go.
Yes.
So I thought that's pretty impressive. But that does require an intimate knowledge of the types of wood that you're using. Yeah. And it's a whole world. And I think that's beautiful, that story with Bonnie and Charlie. And that's the kind of ancestral wisdom that is very hard to find. And those people aren't on Instagram. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of knowledge isn't being given away on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they per se aren't, but I assume they're not. But you only find it walking with your 2 feet, like moving your body into spaces with real relationships. And sometimes that does start online. You find a farmer on Instagram or something, and then that cherry sort of spirals into more connections, and then you get farther and farther away from the internet or the web, as you said. I'm never going to forget now that you said it. It's the web. Whoever told you that they were onto that. Pay attention to the words that we've chosen.
Yeah. And the thing about that too is just like the Bonnie and Charlie thing is I am astounded by how many relationships. No, I'm not astounded. I'm blessed with how many relationships I have with people that have very little in common with me. I don't need to be algorithmically fed the people that align with me because we have, I don't know why, but my husband and I have always just had older friends. It's just, maybe I just have appreciation and a reverence. I don't know what it is, but we're friends with, a retired welder who, drinks way too much. And in his workshop, he has like pinup girls from 1980 with their boobs hanging out. This guy has nothing in common with me, and
the personality is a 10 out of 10.
Exactly.
And the conversations probably just light up your day.
And he would do anything for us. And, he brought us turkey hunting together, and he, wants about, and I think that when we have these so-called interactions online that are so controlled and shaped and buffered for us, we lose that ability to just appreciate spending time with people that, like, maybe, they're rough around the edges, but you know what? So am I. I'm in real life. My girls would say like I'm a salty dog. Like I really, and who isn't at times? And let's like stop pretending and holding ourselves to these ideals that when we get into these, real life interactions, we're just not even equipped to handle people that don't come to us refined and filtered, because I think that's a real danger of this like massaged digital universe that we've created, And on that idea, what you were saying about the web, I actually shared that. I'll just tell you this one little thing. I shared that with a friend the other day, and she said, it's the same thing with the Apple logo, with the bite taken out of it. And Adam,
I've thought this too. I thought the same thing. I was like, are you telling me your symbol is the symbol of humanity's downfall?
Exactly.
That was a choice.
Like
you're just gonna remind us how this
apple,
started.
Okay, it's got a bite taken out of it. Like,
no,
just
Eden is gone. That's what that says.
Right. Yeah.
There's this company down in Texas that you can go to their website and hire them to make rain or snow, whatever you need. And the friend who told me about them, it's in her area. She said their drone system is called the Prophet.
Oh.
And when I went to their website, their symbol is an angel sprinkling. And I was like, these fools never read a Revelation, or maybe they did. And that's,
wow.
Don't make it any more obvious for us, please. It just gave me kind of like chills to say that somebody would say like, yeah, we are the prophet, and we are we control the rain and the weather, and we are the angel that pours out the bowl. I was like, you don't want that. That's not who you want.
Oh,
that's not a good thing.
Wow. That is just gobsmacking.
The symbols are around us, and people are not hiding what they're doing.
True.
That's the crazy thing. Nobody's trying to be secretive about it, but by putting it into broad daylight, they know that it almost loses its like the tang.
That's true
for people because then it's like, oh well, they never tried to hide what they were doing. Yeah, what are you bothered about?
Yeah, we ignore what's right in front of our faces, and I think that's part of the diminishment and the sort of separation from what we're supposed to be doing. We're sort of dulled to what's right there, but you can't be dulled to certain things and not be dulled to the rest of it, you know? And when you're acutely and you're immersed into something, you start noticing again. And I feel like for me anyway, just making that decision and actually acting on the decision to leave the digital sort of sphere, I just feel like I'm being tied in more intimately, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. And that's the thing is, I wanted to find the Tara that is not shaped by these things, because as much as I'd like to think, oh, I'm an autonomous person, and I'm making my own decisions, well, then why are you going on something that makes you feel lousy after, if that's true? Like, we have to get really honest with ourselves. And then, you know, I want to be what I'm supposed to be here for. And I felt like these things are keeping me away from fully realizing that. So, you know, what that means, I have no idea. I just know that I have to go in a certain direction and have faith that whatever will come from that will come. And that's about all I can do. But just to act on the callings of my heart is sort of that's the plan anyway. And however that sort of comes about, right?
And the farther, like you said, the farther you get from it and the more you behave in agreement. And this is something Allison has embodied very well for me over our years of relationship. And she talked about this a lot when she did her, when she turned 50, she did like 50 things I've learned. Sort of, and they're, you know, each one could be a chapter in a book. And the more you make those decisions, as you said, not only do the better you get at making those decisions when the situation calls for it, but the harder it is to go back and like return to the vomit, you know, like do the wrong thing, make the wrong choice for yourself again, because now you feel it in your body. And when somebody's really used to eating bad food, I know this is me. When it was just my everyday, I didn't know how I felt because I didn't know a day without it. And then after being away from it for so long, then you come back and revisit it and you're like, okay, well, that was miserable. I'm never doing that again. And then somebody says, oh, well, I eat it and I'm just fine. And it's like, well, maybe you think you are, but you don't know how you could feel. And I feel like the computer situation has been the same. The farther I get from it, the more I'm like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. And I didn't know how it was making me feel until I stepped away from it. And that's daunting. And I think it would be simplistic for me to say to the whole world, just stop using it. Like, that's just the way. But being open to those little epiphanies repetitively over and over, and letting someone like you speak to me and give me your understanding of your epiphanies, and then the way I can like see how they dovetail with what I've experienced is really helpful, like really helpful and encouraging as well. I'm thankful that you got on here with me, trekking back through the snow so we could talk thousands of miles apart, or however far we are. It's pretty far.
Quite a ways.
So I'll take this piece from the internet and enjoy it, and then I guess write you a letter afterwards.
Yes, that's the way to do it. I really encourage everybody to find their little pen pals, even if it's just one or two people, and with no timelines, like no expectation that I get a letter and I immediately, you know, we can pretend that it's like, you know, the Pony Express, and if it takes months until it gets to you, then that's fine. There's quite a delight in opening your mailbox and finding an old-fashioned letter, you know, sitting there.
I said that exact thing to my sister yesterday. I told her there's something that I dislike about emails and something that I love about real mail. And I said, nobody goes, oh, yay, I have a stack of emails. But if you open your mailbox and there's a letter, you just get this thrill inside. You just, yes, a letter with my name on it, and it's not from a credit card company, like trying to steal my money or something. Like, yes, please.
Absolutely.
So different.
Yeah. And it's the same with a picture.
Well, I guess I shall.
You know, I got a parcel from a friend, and she put in an actual picture of her baby.
Gosh.
And it was I just sat there staring at it, looking at his little hands and his little kneecaps. And I was like looking at the background, and it was so delightful. And you don't get that same, like, maybe it's because we scroll or we expect like the next thing to come, but no one wants to sit there gazing lovingly at a blue light screen, no matter what the image is. It's, it's not the same effect. So, I'm like all for the snail mail and like finding, getting things back into mailboxes and just trying to get back to this world of the tangible stuff we can feel and smell and resonate with, and good company and good food. And I think that it's really our culture is starving for that, and we don't even know that that's what we're hungry for.
So forward into the real world, I suppose. Yeah, I love it. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me, and all the listeners of Ancestral Kitchen are so amazing. Like, if you can ever meet any of them, I mean, I've met quite a few in real life, and we talk a lot in our group, and the way everybody is approaching this is their food and the thoughtful way that they're thinking. It just has me in awe all the time. So I know that this conversation will be well received and understood. So thank you, Tara. And give also my thanks to Troy for giving you up for a couple hours so I could visit with you. I appreciate that gift from him as well. So until the next time, or until my letter comes in the mail, I guess.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you'd like to support the podcast, you can join as a patron. Choose from various levels starting at $5. You can see what we offer at ancestralkitchenpodcast.com.
While you're there, check out our favourite books, supplements and kitchenware, or give a one-time donation.
Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
And if you know someone who would love our show, tell them about us.
You are helping to bring ancestral food wisdom into modern kitchens, changing the world one plate at a time.